Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
In collaboration with Boise State Public Radio, the Community Library presents a new podcast, Sheep Stories. I'm host Vance Cunningham. Join me as we listen through the archives of the Trailing of the Sheep Festival to learn about the Scottish, Basque, and Peruvian immigrants foundational to the sheep herding industry over the past century. Hear their stories of traveling to Idaho and learning the language of the sheep. Find Sheep Stories wherever you get your podcasts and at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Samantha Wright, filling in for Gemma Gaudette. It's Idaho Matters, and it's time for our Reporter Roundtable. It is Friday, I think, and that's when you get you up to date on all the news that made headlines this week, and boy, do we have a lot of news for you. Today, our panel includes Drew Dodson, reporter and editor for the Valley Lookout, Kevin Fixler, investigative reporter with the Idaho Statesman, and Kaitlyn Hart, with EastIdahoNews.com. Everyone, welcome, 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 and happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Yay. Okay, so let's get started. And this is for Drew and Kevin. Drew, we're going to start with you. There was a groundbreaking on the Stibnite mine. It's fun to say. Last week. Where's the mine again? It's in Idaho.
That's right, Sam. So the Stibnite is the easiest way to think about it is really about 40 miles as the crow flies east of McCall. The nearest major town, which is almost an oxymoron saying Yellow Pine is major, but Yellow Pine is about 14 miles west of Stibnite. So it really is in the far eastern reaches of Valley County.
Gotcha. Okay, and you talked to the CEO of the company that's going to dig up the Stibnite mine, and they said that real construction will start in October, I believe.
Yeah, so I mean, this has been a long time coming. I mean, last Friday's ceremony really was the culmination of, if you go all the way back to the beginning, really 15 plus years of work.
Wow.
Since exploration began in 2009, and then over the last 8 years in the federal permitting process. And so, yeah, with that ceremony, construction does officially begin. They got clearance for that from the Forest Service, which was the lead permitting agency for the mine. And up front here, anyways, obviously, October, high Idaho mountains. There's not really much time before the snow flies and is here to stay. But nonetheless, they'll be able to kind of get started on what Perpetua CEO John Cherry kind of called the preliminary construction. Things like completing more detailed engineering, starting to build roads, starting to build a camp for workers to be at the site, starting to order materials and supplies for next season of construction things that have longer lead times. So they're kind of getting a jump on all those things. But as far as, the nitty gritty and the major side of construction, I don't think we'll really see that starting until the snow melts off next spring.
Gotcha. Well, if it's not far from Yellow Pine, then there's going to be a lot of snow. Kevin, you're covering this story too, and they may be breaking ground, but Stibnite still faces lawsuits. So give us a lightning round here. How many and who's suing?
That's right, but wait, there's more. The lawsuits have been filed in federal district court, one by the Nez Perce tribe up in North Idaho, and then also by a coalition of 6 conservation groups. Among them are the Idaho Conservation League, Save the South Fork Salmon, groups like that.
And there's some water quality and air quality permits they don't have yet.
That's right. There's even one more lawsuit.
Oh, geez, I missed one. Okay, go.
Oh, no. It's actually related to one of the state permits, and it's the air quality permit. So that sits in state district court, and that is filed by ICL and Save the South Fork Salmon. So that's kind of held up a little bit. But then we also have 2 pending water quality permits at the state level that would still need to be issued for the mine operations to move forward.
Wow. And Kevin, I don't think we've said this. What will they be mining at Stibnite? What are they looking for?
The project is called the Stibnite Gold Project, and we should underscore that word there. There's been a lot of emphasis lately on antimony, which is a critical mineral used in things like defense, missiles, nuclear weapons, night vision goggles, also some clean energy technologies that are emerging, like liquid batteries, and also for solar panel glass. But this really is a gold mine in the end. There's about $18 billion
Oh,
sitting in the ground out there, whereas about 148 million pounds of antimony, estimated at about $3 billion on market price right now.
wow. Okay. And Drew, you wrote that one of the first things they're going to be doing is moving a river, and this has to do with some of the environmental concerns, I understand.
Yeah, so this element of the project, I would say, has been of high interest for years, kind of on both sides of the aisle, regardless of where you stand on mining and for or opposed to the project. But essentially, the very first thing that needs to be done for them to develop this mine is to reroute the East Fork of the South Fork of the Salmon River, which flows through the project
Wow.
site. As it currently stands, one of the three main open pit mines that Perpetua is proposing to develop is currently a pit lake. It's the Yellow Pine Pit Lake. The East Fork flows through it. It is the most prominent scar of historic mining operations at Stibnite, and at its present state, it is also the furthest upstream that Chinook salmon, bull trout, endangered species of fish like that are able to make it due to kind of a cascade of boulders that
Hmm.
has formed upstream of the pit lake that they are not able to ascend. And so what you have is you have quite a bit of really rich fish habitat upstream of that point that really for the last 80 years has not been accessible by fish. And so, with the development of the mine, they need to basically make that pit lake dry.
Hmm.
And to do that, they will tunnel through the mountain about a mile in length and create a fish passage tunnel that would restore upstream access to some of these species. This thing has been engineered to include like resting pools and to kind of try and mimic natural habitat as much as possible, to the point that there'll actually be lighting in the tunnel to kind of delineate between daytime, nighttime, and simulate that. So that's job one is to kind of reroute that river and then get the water out of the pit lake, and then um, that's kind of where mining will really begin is in that yellow pine pit.
I think that gives us an idea of just how big of a project, an extensive a project this is going to be. Kevin, how long will it take to get the mine up and running, actually producing gold and antimony, if all the lawsuits and everything are settled?
Construction is about 3 years out. Drew had mentioned the preliminary construction, and then they have to get going on sort of the larger infrastructure. So we're not talking until 28 or 29 before
Mm.
they can actually get operations going. And then at present, they're talking about a 15-year lifespan of the mine, but they also are still discussing additional exploration because they believe there's more antimony and gold out in the ground in related sites.
Wow. Okay, so a lot more to this story, these stories, and you can find them in the Valley Lookout and the Idaho Statesman. So please check them out. Kaitlyn, 3 schools in Idaho Falls closed down after reports and rumors of a gun threat. So when was this? What schools were affected?
Right. So, this was yesterday. Essentially, a rumor started circulating Wednesday night that a person or a group of people with a gun had been seen in a car near Skyline High School. The A student reported it to the school resource officer and school administrators, and out of an abundance of caution, Skyline High School, Eagle Rock Middle School, and Ethel Boys Elementary, which are all right by each other. Skyline is right across the street from Eagle Rock and Ethel Boys. They were all closed down Thursday. Um, the school district ended up sending out a release yesterday that kind of explained what happened. And essentially, officers were able to trace the rumor back to a report from this student who said that they saw a car in a church parking lot that's really close to Skyline High School, and they saw multiple people in the car putting on ski masks, and said that they saw one of the passengers with what they thought was a gun. Um,
And this,
what's important to know,
it's
go
it,
ahead,
this
sorry.
this turned out just to be a school prank, right?
It did. So what's important to know about this is that the Emotion Bowl, the big football game between Idaho Falls High School and Skyline High School, is this weekend. And it's really common for these two high schools to pull pranks on each other throughout this week.
Okay.
And it turns out that these students had actually come to the school to vandalize a giant rock outside of the school, which is what the rock is there for. And they had brought an Orbeez gun to the school and covered their face with face masks. And then they were shooting those little small water absorbent polymer beads called Orbeez at the rock. The students were caught and they were asked to leave by administrators and school resource officers. But the student had only seen them like preparing for the prank in a nearby parking lot. So they did the right thing. If you see something, say something. And they contacted the school and let everybody know. And it was just, unfortunately a miscommunication, but it really shows, the severity of these things. And we've actually been having a really big rise in gun threats at our schools lately. This isn't the first one. I believe this week, Madison High School in Rexburg also had a gun threat. I don't think they closed the school, but it's something that is happening a lot this week.
Wow. Okay. Scary, but glad it all worked out. Kevin, there's a lot of interest in Idaho's newest method of lethal execution. You've got an update on just what officials might be considering, although we don't know for sure yet.
That's right. This past year in the legislature, they passed a law that will prioritize a firing squad, which is approved in other states, but Idaho will become the first where it is the primary execution method in the entire United States.
And I didn't get a chance to Google this, but they're talking about a remote operated system to actually do the execution. And this is just bizarre to me. I just have this vision in my head of something like a Terminator robot with a pulse rifle. Do we know what this is? What kind of a system they're talking about?
We don't. They have yet to issue any of their protocols. That's forthcoming, and I don't know how theatrical it is expected to be. And I fear that your online search would have ended up disappointed because this has never been done. It's a novel effort, and it's with a focus on ensuring that individuals who would participate, whether that's members of the corrections department potentially, or volunteer members of law enforcement who would actually pull the triggers. In this case, we're thinking this may be something that's push button operated and would fire guns at the individual.
Well, you found out that the Department of Correction is looking at how other states are looking at this, including South Carolina, that did this earlier this year. And without getting too graphic, what did they do?
Yes, South Carolina has executed 2 people, 2 incarcerated condemned members by firing squad this year. It was the first time in almost 15 years in the United States that that method had been used. And South Carolina, interestingly, does not release its protocols to the public, unlike Idaho, which will. But we know from members of the media who are permitted to attend executions out in South Carolina that they had 3 members of the corrections department, obviously with veiled faces and so forth, line up about 10 feet away from the condemned. There was no warning given, and the individual wears a hood, has a target, a bullseye on their chest, and without warning, they fired, and these two condemned members were killed.
Wow. Okay. And with a robot system or a remote system, I guess, it seems like a lot of effort to keep humans from having to actually fire the gun. And you go into the article a bit about, that and why that is. But you also talked to the bill sponsor of the original bill, and he says that's exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, Representative Bruce Skog, a Republican out of Nampa, he's been the sponsor of repeat death penalty bills, including now his second bill related to a firing squad. He previously passed a bill in 2023 to make it the backup method to lethal injection, but now they'll reverse and firing squad become number one. And yeah, he talked about how, that's really his preference to kind of have this old school vibe to it. He had actually talked in a previous legislative hearing about why can't we just take the condemned individual out back and basically shoot them, and receive pushback from the then director of the prison system about whether that's legal. I mean, there's certainly constitutional questions about that, but the intent, according to Skog, is that there will be basically a backup to the initial method. And if the push button doesn't work, then they will have members of, whether it's volunteer law enforcement or even corrections officers, who are ready to go with rifles in hand, according to, again, the bill sponsor.
Okay, and I think you said that that law about firing squads being the first method, that goes into effect next year?
That's right. They set it out until July of 2026, and that's so they can retrofit the existing execution chamber, which was only designed for lethal injection. We anticipate that they will have the physical structure completed early next year. We don't have an exact date or deadline, but they're already in the demolition phase, and will move toward construction. And then the additional months will be used for training purposes. But the law goes in effect July 1st next year. And so they need to be ready. And the new director of prisons, Bree Derrickson, said that they will be ready to go.
All right, there's a lot more here, so be sure to check out Kevin's story at the Statesman. Drew, if you're heading up to the mountains for some last-minute camping or maybe some fall excursions, you might want to put some snacks in your car, because an accident last week left travelers on Highway 55 stuck in their cars for 12 hours. I drew that out on purpose. Drew, give us a background on the accident itself and exactly where this happened.
Yeah, so first and foremost, credit to Boise Dev's Sarah Jacobson for writing that story. She is, in fact, the one who wrote it for us. It ran in Valley Lookout on Wednesday, but it was courtesy of her. So thank you to her for that. But I was actually involved in this story by way of being a motorist. I was among those stranded.
Oh my gosh.
And so this was an accident that it happened kind of just north of that new stoplight there on 55 at the intersection with Banks Loman. I mean, just beyond that. And it sounded like it was kind of the classic, veered off the road. This was a northbound driver. Veered off the road to the right, overcorrected left, lost control, wound up in the river. There was 2 passengers in the vehicle, including the driver. Both were able to escape. However, the driver ended up, it sounds like, being caught in the river and dying at the scene. And the passenger was airlifted to a hospital.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how long was traffic stopped on the highway? How long were you stuck, I guess, is a good question.
Well, I wasn't stuck very long because I turned around and went back. But the highway was closed for about 12 hours. This accident happened at something like 6 p.m. on Saturday evening. I had actually just come down. I was running some errands in the valley that day, and that night I was coming home at about 10 o'clock, and I probably pulled up to the roadblock around 10:30 or so, and my choice was either to go back to Boise and stay with a friend, or go the long way around, cut over to 95 on 52 through Emmett there, go up and around through Council and New Meadows and back down through McCall to get home to Donnelly. That would have put me home at about 3 a.m., so I went back to Boise.
Oh, man. So why didn't anyone tell the drivers what was going on? There were a lot of complaints, and the story mentioned there's no cell service in this spot. Is there no way to contact folks and say, hey, you're going to be stuck, or you're stuck and here's why?
Well, I think certainly cell service is a big part of it. I think there probably also could have been better communication up front about what was going on. I mean, like I said, I pulled up to the roadblock probably around 10:30 or so, So more than 4 hours after this accident had happened, I had not gotten any news releases about the highway being closed. I think there's a reader board there in Horseshoe Bend, one of those electronic signs with notices that did not have anything posted on it. I know it wasn't just me who was in the dark because there was a whole line of cars in front of me that,
Mm.
same time of day was proceeding on past Horseshoe Bend, not knowing what was ahead. So I think it was. I mean, it's a challenging situation, right? Things happen in that canyon, and there is very limited cell service, if any. But certainly it seems like communication could have been better this go around,
So
given that the highway was closed down for such a long period of time. I think when it's lesser incidents, maybe you don't bother with it, but gosh, overnight that's a pretty major closure.
right. So what's the solution? We're getting more and more cars on rural highways. On this highway, is there a plan? Are officials working on a plan for this kind of situation?
ITD confirmed that they are working. They're coming up with ideas for how to improve communications during these sorts of incidents. They didn't offer specific details, but certainly I'd imagine, I'm speculating here, that those reader boards would figure to be part of the solution, unless all of a sudden we're going to have 5G coverage all up and down the canyon, which
Yeah,
it seems like that might be further out.
I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. Drew, thanks for the update. Kaitlyn, I want to have you talk about a foster care closet in Blackfoot that just got a big boost. And you're going to have to start with telling me about what a foster care closet is.
Sure, yeah. So a foster care closet is a project that the village in Blackfoot started, where essentially they accept like free clothing and supplies for children and young adults in foster care. And those people can come to the village and pick out anything they want, anything they need. It's a cool kind of like community hub. It's a place where you can just donate your stuff and help people out. It's operated outside of a storage unit in Idaho. Or they used to operate out of a storage unit in Idaho Falls, the Blackfoot Food Pantry, and they're doing some really, really awesome stuff. It's a really cool thing. Recently, the Idaho Foster and Adoptive Parent Association that runs it received an $80,000 donation from Ag West Farm Credit to help remodel its new building since they moved. Um, and this will really boost the foster care closet. They serve, children's and families across 16 counties in Southeast Idaho. And it's going to be really, really, really helpful, especially right now because they actually needed the money to install HVAC systems in their new building. So I know that the nonprofit is super grateful. My coworker, Lisa Letty, she talked with the organizers and they said that they're super, super grateful, especially because they'll be able to finish their facility and like welcome people into it pretty soon.
This is so important for foster kids. I didn't even know these existed. I think this is fascinating. And that, this is, I think, the only one in Southeast Idaho.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. AgWest also donated $50,000 to Malad High School, $50,000 to Caribou County Fairgrounds, and $26,000 to Butte County for a new fairground building. It actually speeds up the village's time estimate to be completed as well. Because of the $80,000, they are expecting to be completed by the end of the year or early in 2026. And they'll be able to host classes and support programs for foster families and youth in foster care. And it's really, really important. There's not a lot of places like this. And so, especially for like foster teens transitioning into adulthood, they'll be able to get, independent living kits that are stocked with items like pots and pans and brooms and bed sheets and blankets and things to take to college or living on their own. And it's really helpful for people who are struggling.
Kevin, is the Boise airport about to go international?
I'd say don't hold your breath is the short of it.
That was okay. That was quick. You found out that it's not easy to get a nonstop international flight to go somewhere because you have to build a customs facility, and we don't have one. Talk about that.
Yeah, that's right. Those are costly, we've learned. And Airport Director Rebecca Hupp recently visited with the Boise City Council and explained that it is quite costly. The airport officials have been in touch with their variety of airlines, commercial airlines, and inquired whether or not they want to bring an international flight, be that most likely to Cancun, nonstop. But the demand isn't quite there. It's a little soft. We do know that Treasure Valley travelers do want to get to primarily locations in Mexico as end destinations, but the cost doesn't quite warrant the demand right now for creating that customs facility that you need in order to process passengers back into the U.S.
Well, I think it's interesting that not, the airlines don't want to be kind of the first to do this, but there is an expansion coming up at the airports. Could international be part of that equation?
Yes, it could, and that's anticipated to be completed by 2029. It's roughly a $700 million project. It includes an expansion of the terminal as well as a new concourse, which will have up to 10 more gates. And they do plan to be flexible in terms of providing for that opportunity of international travel down the road, but the airport is, I'd say, non-committal at this point until they have airlines that are willing to travel nonstop to international destinations.
Absolutely. Okay, there's more to this article, so check out Kevin's Statesman story to find out more about international flights. I want to jump ahead to Drew. We're talking about money, and we're talking about, of all things, kayaks. The North Fork Championships are coming back next year. Tell us about the race. How does this work?
Well, so it's an extreme whitewater kayaking race. Basically, there are kind of the only way I can think to describe them as gates that are strung across the river through these various Class 5 rapids on which uh, the race is staged, and racers have to pass through the gates without hitting them in order to avoid a time penalty. And the fastest racers with the fastest times, of course, they are crowned the champions of the North Fork Championship Series.
Well, this sounds like a lot of fun, especially if you're a kayaker, and I guess a lot of fun to watch. How big a deal is this to the area? You've got competitors from all over the world and people who climb all over the river who are trying to watch this.
It's a huge deal. I'm not a kayaker, a whitewater kayaker myself. However, I'm familiar with this event just by virtue of over the last 10 years, you when it's being held, you'll drive up 55 or down 55, and there in the canyon, you will just see cars lined up along the side of the road. In fact, I think one of those slow vehicle turnout lanes in the past has almost been converted to parking because there's so many people trying to jam in there and get a window into this thing. The comparison I'm told, it's kind of like the Super Bowl, if you will, of whitewater kayaking. The only event that really it kind of is in the same atmosphere, I guess, as far as these sorts of extreme sports events would be Red Bull Rampage for mountain biking that they do down there in Utah each year. Which, if you've ever seen that, it's absolutely bananas what some of these guys are riding, and that's essentially what it is with these kayakers. I mean, you look out
Gosh.
in these rapids they're running, and you just go, I would never.
Okay, they've made some changes to the event. They've added a festival. They've moved it to the middle of the week to help reduce congestion on Highway 55. See earlier story on traffic about Highway 55. What else can we expect next year?
Well, the main change is just that the festival, it previously had kind of been based in Crouch and had been, that kind of been where what I the town that hosted the North Fork Championship, I suppose. However, that's a little bit further away. It's more logistics involved, on and on. And so this year it'll actually be based right there in Smiths Ferry. If you're familiar with Cougar Mountain Lodge, it'll essentially that'll be the center of the activity this year. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, where in years past it was held on weekends, it'll now be held midweek. which should help reduce some of those issues on 55, some of that congestion that we were talking about.
Gotcha. And you mentioned this is next year. That's when the championship's going to restart.
That's right. Yeah, it'll be held June 9th through 11th. It's kind of a spring flows, high water, white water type of event.
And Drew, Charlie's fan club. The club is trying to save the McCall Winter Carnival. For anyone who knows only about the Loch Ness Monster, tell us who Charlie is. We'll start there.
Well, Charlie is the Payette Lake version, and we love her dearly.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. So what's this fan club?
Well, so this is the McCall Area Chamber's way of trying to drum up some more support for the Winter Carnival and really specifically the Winter Carnival Mardi Gras Parade. The Charlie's Fan Club is basically it's a donation campaign where the first, I forget the number right off the top of my head, maybe it's the first 1,000 donors get a Charlie's Fan Club, or I believe in Charlie button. And so that's really what this is all about. It's just a creative way to try and drum up a little bit more money for the parade.
All right. And putting on the whole carnival isn't cheap. I think they spend $28,000 on traffic control alone along Highway 55. 55 again, it's like the center of the universe. But the McCall Chamber actually lost $20,000. How much does this all cost?
Yeah, so this is about $100,000 event by the time it's all said and done, and a very large portion of that is tied specifically to the parade. I mean, think about it. You've got a main state highway. You're shutting it down through town for, I don't know, a couple hours anyway. And then on top of that, you're going to have tens of thousands of people crowding in to watch this thing. I mean, it's a nightmare, and it takes a lot of management as far as not just shutting the street down, but directing traffic, crowd control, porta potties. I mean, everything. There's just so much that goes into hosting something of that size. And so that's kind of what the chamber has grown up against here in recent years as the popularity of the carnival continues to increase. People continue wanting to come to McCall and get to experience the magic, and they're trying to kind of figure out how to keep that magic going.
Absolutely. And here's the deeper part of the story. You wrote that the city council in McCall is changing the way they spend their money to put more towards things like housing and snow removal and less on things like the carnival. Walk us through this change.
Yeah, so this is where you really start speaking to the civics nerd part of me. So I'll try and keep it brief, but no promises. I guess to start with, one of the important things to understand about McCall is the city has two taxes that are basically designed to capitalize on tourism. They focus on a 3% levy on short-term lodging. So anytime somebody stays in an Airbnb, anytime somebody books a motel room, anytime somebody stays at the Shore Lodge, they're paying a percent to the city. And these two separate taxes dictate how that money is used. Now, one of them is specifically for, roads, streets, sidewalks, that kind of thing.
Yep.
That's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about is the tourism version, the tourism tax, as I call it.
Gotcha.
That just levies 3%, and it raises roughly $900,000 million a year. And for the last 15 some years, this tax has been kind of doled out in an annual grant cycle process that is ultimately at the discretion of the McCall City Council. There is a committee that scores and ranks funding applications, and then the City Council has final say on whether those are approved or not. Historically, these applications have kind of been the gamut. It'll be the Little Ski Hill, it'll be the Manchester Ice and Events Center, it'll be Little League baseball equipment. It's things that community causes, if you will. In addition, it has also been city departments. things like snow removal on downtown McCall sidewalks. That is funded by this tax. Certain housing programs in the city are funded by the tax. And so as the years went on, the city kind of started absorbing more and more of the tax, and the council started prioritizing some of those city department applications more, and a disconnect of sorts grew between the committee that it was scoring the applications and the council. And so last year
Mm.
they got together and said, "Hey, maybe there's a better way. Maybe we can find a new process that'll help us be more on the same page." And so starting last year, the council began scraping 60% off the top to fund those city department requests. And those are no longer ranked and scored by the committee, which instead focuses exclusively on the community applications. And so the point of that entire long-winded explanation is that the chamber is one of those community organizations that applies for funding and historically have applied for funding specifically for managing the parade during the winter carnival. And so for this last year, when the funding request came around, the committee had a much larger pool of money to allocate. And as such, I think you can imagine they were probably more critical of each application, had tougher decisions to make, and
Mm.
as a result, the chamber's request for the winter carnival funding was not fully funded, and that's where we are now.
Well, and the argument there is the carnival is a big tourism draw. So I guess the question is it in any kind of trouble? Is the parade in trouble? Could either of these disappear? Especially with these new funding ways of funding?
I don't think the carnival will disappear because the carnival is much more than the parade, even though the parade is a big part of it. I think when most people think of McCall Winter Carnival, they think snow sculptures.
Yep.
And, I think that's here to stay, regardless of whether or not there's a parade. Um, I do think the parade is very much in danger. However, just because there's a funding shortfall now doesn't mean that there couldn't be creative solutions to work around that. Obviously, more funding is probably the easiest answer, but there could also be alternatives, a shorter parade route or a different route or a different way to kind of reduce those costs that are putting such a burden on the chamber.
All right. You can find out more about that money change and the carnival in Drew's story in the Valley Lookout. There's also a picture of Charlie, well, Charlie in the parade, that you can check out too if you want to see what she looks like. Kaitlyn, let's continue with really fun community things that are going on. Apparently, there's a 26-day Halloween film contest. Can you explain to us what this is and how it works?
Yeah, so it's actually really cool. If you have an iPhone or any kind of smartphone, I guess, and a passion for filmmaking, you can win the 2025 Halloween short film contest. It's held by Film Garage 208 here in Idaho Falls, but they are accepting really any submission from Idaho. So um, they have been doing this for the last 2 years, where as of yesterday, starting yesterday, people who want to submit their own Halloween short film have 26 days to plan, shoot, and edit their short films before the due date on October 20th by midnight. And they have very special rules. So, rule number one is you have to include dialogue between at least two people. And number two is you must include a running scene. They do mention don't hurt yourself trying to run hard. A jog is okay. But it's actually really cool because this is the third year. The co-owners emphasized to my coworker Logan Ramsey that the participants don't have to shoot their entry with professional camera gear. It's more so the story behind it and the effort you put into it. Then at the end of the competition, they will hold a screening of the top 10 entries at Center Stage Theater in Idaho Falls, which I think is really cool. That would be so fun to go to. Um, Essentially, there are three categories with different awards. So the first award would be pro for $1,000. The second is amateur for $250, and then best makeup for $100. It's a really cool kind of spooky community thing to get into. They actually had trouble last year getting people to participate because the first year they did it, they had so many short films entered that people were like, oh no, I'm never going to win. So then barely, I think they only had
Oh.
11 people participate last year. And so it's really important to get this out there because so many people, I think, were discouraged last year. We talked with the organizers about this, and um, it's really just up to your creativity. You don't have to have any kind of expensive special gear or anything. It's up to the acting and your creativity and storytelling. So to enter, you just post your video on YouTube with the title format, the name of the film. It's all in our story, and then you'll send an email to them, and they'll consider it for the winners and to show it at the center stage.
Wow, it sounds like so much fun. And this, like I said, you only get 26 days to do it, right? It's got to be wrapped up before they actually have before they air it, right?
Right. So it started yesterday, so you only have 25 days now. And so you have to you have to shoot and edit your short films before October 20th by midnight is, I believe, when it has to be posted to YouTube. You have to send your email in, or it won't be counted. So because it's the third year, I think this is going to be, I think people have heard about it enough and are getting prepared that it's going to be a really great year.
Well, I appreciate you telling us about it. I want to thank the Reporter Roundtable today, especially Drew and Kaitlyn. Thank you so much for sticking it out. Thanks for being here today. Hope you have a good weekend, both of you.
You too. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank the entire Reporter Roundtable. We had Drew Dodson, reporter and editor with the Valley Lookout. We had Kevin Fixler, investigative reporter with the Idaho Statesman. And, of course, Kaitlyn Hart with EastIdahoNews.com. Check out their stories. We will put some links on our website, BoiseStatePublicRadio.org, back to all of the great reporting that they do.
You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudette.